A couple of years after the unification under King Ibn Saud, the USA recognized their independence. In that same period, oil companies started extensively exploring oil reserves on the Arabian Peninsula. Only after American petroleum companies discovered vast oil deposits did policymakers in Washington come to regard Saudi Arabia as more than camels and deserts. As World War II progressed, the United States began to believe that Saudi oil was of strategic importance and declared the kingdom eligible for Lend-Lease aid. In that same period, the consortium made up of American petroleum corporations set up Aramco. In 1950, Saudi Arabia, influenced by Venezuela, demanded a 50-50 profit share. To help their corporations, President Harry Truman enacted a tax break called Golden Gimmick that permitted Aramco to deduct the Saudi share of profits from corporate taxes the company paid in the United States. Let's also not forget that Saudis agreed to trade their oil only in US dollars, which helped the US dollar to become the most important currency in the world. Just as relations between the US and Saudi Arabia started to warm up, the first major obstacle happened, one that isn't resolved to this day. Ever since the inception of the State of Israel, the Arab world was firmly against it. This was a major headache for U.S. foreign policy. As one of Israel's greatest supporters, this put them at odds with Arab states. At the same time, they tried to contain Soviet influence and rising Arab nationalism. During the 1950s, the Suez Crisis unfolded, and it played a pivotal role in enhancing the reputation of the United States in Saudi Arabia. This was largely due to President Eisenhower's pressure, which led to the eventual retreat of the British-French-Israeli coalition. After the Egyptian-Syrian unification in 1958, Egypt's pro-Soviet strategy returned to power, and King Saud al-Saud joined their alliance, which declined the U.S.-Saudi relationship to a fairly low point. However, Egypt attacked Saudi Arabia from bases in Yemen during the 1962 Yemeni Revolution because of Saudi Arabia's anti-revolution propaganda, which made King Saud seek U.S. support. The U.S. immediately helped, and the relationship rebuilt itself to become healthy again. In November 1964, Faisal became the new king after the conflicts he had with his brother Saud. The U.S. was not sure about the outcome of such an unplanned change in the Saudi monarchy. King Faisal, however, continued the cooperation with the U.S. until October 20, 1973, as Faisal decided to contribute to an oil embargo against the U.S. and Europe in favor of the Arab position during the Yom Kippur War. This caused an energy crisis in the U.S. Despite the tensions caused by the oil embargo, the U.S. wished to resume relations with the Saudis. Indeed, the great oil wealth accumulated as a result of the price increases allowed the Saudis to purchase large sums of American military technology. The embargo was lifted in March 1974, after the U.S. pressured Israel into negotiating with Syria over the Golan Heights. The Saudis' increase of oil production to stabilize the oil price and the support of anti-communism have all contributed to closer ties with the U.S. The high point in U.S.-Saudi relations happened in the 1990s during the Gulf War, when President Bush deployed over 500,000 ground troops to protect Saudi Arabia from a possible Iraqi invasion. But soon after the high point came the low point, 9/11, as al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden and 15 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. There was a huge rise in negative portrayals of Saudi Arabia. The media coverage sparked debates about Saudi Arabia's alleged involvement in financing terrorism and the need for greater accountability. This scrutiny also had implications for U.S.-Saudi relations, with calls for re-evaluating the partnership and reassessing Saudi Arabia's role in the fight against terrorism. In recent news, there has been considerable discussion about the conflict between Joe Biden and Mohammed bin Salman, which includes bin Salman threatening to harm the U.S. economy. However, considering the historical events we have previously explored, it becomes evident that such conflicts are not uncommon within the U.S.-Saudi relationship, and have typically been resolved to the benefit of both nations. With all this said, some changes will affect the future dynamics between the two. In recent years, the United States has achieved self-sufficiency in oil production, altering its role from being a major importer of Saudi oil to becoming sort of a lobbyist looking to maintain its favorable crude oil prices for the benefit of its economy. Meanwhile, China emerged as the primary buyer of Saudi oil, helping to improve Sino-Saudi relations, which has raised concerns in the United States. China has also taken the role of mediator between Saudi Arabia and Iran, working towards finding common ground and resolving their conflicts. With Saudi Arabia becoming a regional power in recent decades, they are looking to make its own geopolitical path, and as shown through history, sometimes confidently opposing U.S. interests. Nonetheless, it is important to acknowledge that Saudi Arabia heavily relies on U.S. arms and advanced technology, which cannot easily be substituted by China or Russia. We can't forget that Saudi Arabia consistently allocates a significant share of its GDP to its defense expenditures, demonstrating its commitment to maintaining a strong military. In the end, U.S.-Saudi relations have experienced both favorable and challenging periods, and recent developments have brought about notable changes in their dynamics. However, despite these shifts, both nations still rely on and will rely on each other for mutual benefits and shared interests.